Welcome back to NBC Sports Talk. Yesterday, Birmingham, Alabama, crime files. Nick Saban, that's his car. Nick Saban's car getting a parking ticket. Someone later suggesting it must have been an Auburn fan giving out those tickets. Welcome back, everybody. Russ Thaler here. Time to talk some college football on the show. And for that, we bring in Jay Christensen from wizofodds.com and Ben Mahler from Yahoo Sports. And Ben, if that was in Tuscaloosa, that never would have happened, right?
No, you can't do that. That's like giving Santa Claus handcuffing Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny. This is Nick Saban. You can't. This guy's got. He's like a god. You can't mess with Nick Saban. Come on.
Jay, what kind of retribution can Saban throw down upon the people who did that to him?
Well, I think he can afford the ticket. I'm pretty confident of that. If there is some issue here, maybe if one of his players happened to be driving Nick to the appointment, then we might have some issues here. But no, it's just a minor infraction. And, of course, everything gets blown up bigger in Alabama, particularly with the game coming up a week from Saturday against Louisiana State.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that in a second. But before we talk about that, I want to go back to last Saturday night. And Notre Dame loses to USC at home, a big night, a huge recruiting night. Brian Kelly, curiously, doesn't use any of his timeouts down the stretch as USC runs out the clock. And then a USC linebacker, Chris Gallipo, says, hey, they laid down on us, and that's Notre Dame. They quit. And then we get back up from Barkley, the quarterback at USC, and then apologies all around. All right, from the outside looking in, Ben, did Notre Dame quit?
Well, I think they did. Here's the way I look at it. You always go by the initial statement. I deal with my politicians and my athletes this way. When they make a statement and then apologize later, you always go with the initial statement. I mean, we're sitting here on a Tuesday night, and Notre Dame still has a timeout. You know, what good is that going to do Brian Kelly and Notre Dame? They were in the game. They had a chance to win the game. I know they didn't play well. They had the turnovers, and Brian Kelly said it's time to move on. But the bottom line is they didn't play the game out till the end, and it's like a taboo in sports. You're not supposed to talk about a team quitting. People go nuts when you bring that up. I don't think what Notre Dame did was near as bad as what the Indianapolis Colts did in the Sunday night NFL game, but they did not play the game out. They kept a timeout.
I really think that this is a non-issue. USC a couple of years ago against UCLA had UCLA beat 21-7, and Rick Neuheisel happened to have a couple of timeouts left on the clock in the closing minutes of the game, and he started to use them. Pete Carroll then called for a deep pass. Barkley connected, and there was a fight that ensued on the field immediately after that play. And at the time, USC players said, hey, what's the deal? You know, we had them beat. Why are they using these timeouts? So now, less than 2 years later, we have the same type of situation, and Notre Dame doesn't use its timeouts. And USC is claiming, hey, these guys quit on us. I don't know which way USC really wants this thing to be, but to me, there's some inconsistencies here. And the fact that they're still talking about this 2 days later, to me, is not a good sign, because they have a very big game coming up Saturday against Stanford.
Well, the Stanford game, let's be realistic here. They're not going to beat Stanford. This was their game. The Notre Dame-USC game is the rivalry game. And the reason we're still talking about it is it's a great story. And I got to believe that somebody went to Lane Kiffin and said, hey, Lane, you got to apologize, do the PR thing, the public relations thing. But you look at Matt Barkley following it up, as you said, the linebacker from USC coming out and saying it. I mean, this is how they feel in the USC locker room. I think the story really is what's going to happen next year when Notre Dame and USC play, when the media brings this up again. I mean, that's going to be the intriguing part of it. This is the game for USC with all the shenanigans going on with the program right now. For them to win in South Bend was huge, and then for them to rub in some salt on the open wound made it even better, I thought.
Yeah, and it probably knocked Notre Dame out of any chance of running the table and possibly sneaking into that BCS conversation. And look, we're going to get that game in a couple of weekends between LSU and Alabama. The winner of that game gets the inside track to the national championship game. The loser has to move down the list a little bit. So who's in the best position as you look at the BCS standings to now make a run for that second spot in the national championship game? Jay, how about you start?
I still think this is going to be a lot of potential here for a second LSU and Alabama rematch. The way I see it, there's a lot of distance between LSU and Alabama. Oklahoma State is 103rd in the country in defense. Right now, they're in the number 3 spot. I don't know if they're going to be able to hold on to that. Frankly, I think Oklahoma wins that game. And the rest of the teams on the pecking order, I think they're going to be quite a ways down. If LSU and Alabama can play a very tight game a week from Saturday, I could very, very well see a rematch in the BCS title game.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jay, I love Oklahoma State. Their defense a little bit better than it's been in years past. They can score a bunch of points. And maybe it's just my love affair with teams that play that style of offense, but I really think the Cowboys are in great position. This can be the year for Les Miles. We all love Les Miles from the rant he had years ago, but I think they're going to be in the national championship game. And if you go by history, history is one of the teams from the Southeastern Conference is going to be there, but I think we're going to get an Oklahoma State versus either LSU or Alabama in the national championship game.
No, Oklahoma still might have something to say about that. Not getting in, maybe knocking off Oklahoma State. But Bob Stoops sort of, put it aside, that loss to Texas Tech at home. But boy, Oklahoma looked like they had a chance to run the table too. Ben, how much scrutiny should Bob Stoops be under at this point, losing at home like that?
Well, I think you got to be critical. Bob Stoops is one of the best coaches in college football, but you were a 29.5-point favorite. Texas Tech is really off the radar in college football. I talked about it on my radio show over the weekend. Most people outside of Lubbock, Texas, can't name one guy on the offensive side for Texas Tech. For them to go into Norman and dominate and be able to move the ball. I realize Oklahoma had 4 or 5 guys out with injury, but we always have heard over the years that the backups for Oklahoma are better than the starters for Texas Tech. It wasn't the case here. Really the defining moment, pat on the back to Tommy Tuberville. I'm not a big Tuberville guy. I was a Mike Leach guy, but that is a huge win for Texas Tech. And as everyone knows here, for Oklahoma, there's no excuse for that. Whether they were looking ahead or not, you got to win that game. Maybe you don't blow out Texas Tech, but at least win the game. They had some missed field goals. Bob Stoops summed it up best. They blew every area of that game. There wasn't one area where Oklahoma played well. Completely unexpected.
There's no conference as complete this season from top to bottom as the Big 12. Frankly, okay, Kansas is not anything special. Iowa State, of course, is not anything special. But the rest of those teams in that league, you gotta be ready to play every Saturday. And I'm going to find it really difficult for somebody to go through this Big 12 undefeated. Frankly, I don't blame Stoops one bit. He had a big game coming up this Saturday against Kansas State. He was probably looking ahead to that. It's going to happen, and I expect Oklahoma State's probably going to be a team that gets tripped up, as will Kansas State. I don't think anybody in this conference is going to go through undefeated.
Real quick, guys, we're running out of time. Ben, what does West Virginia to the Big 12 mean for that conference and for the Big East?
Well, I think it's devastating for the Big East. I think it's a good pickup for the Big 12, although we'd like to see West Virginia play a little bit better than they did the other night against Syracuse when they embarrassed themselves. But I think it's a good pickup for the Big 12. I don't know what it means for the Big East. They got a lot of problems over there.
Jay?
I think it's ridiculous, this expansion nonsense that's going on. West Virginia, their closest opponent in the conference is going to be Iowa State. That's 733 miles away. This is just complete foolishness. What's next? Hawaii's going to join the Big East? I mean, this has to end at some point.
Jay Christensen, Wiz of Odds, Ben Mahler, Yahoo Sports. Gentlemen, thanks so much.